This video is sponsored by Shredlight, the best lighting solution for electric skateboards by consensus. Whether you are shopping for headlights, taillights, underglow lights, or helmet lights, you should check out shredlights.com and use the discount code eSkateHQ to get 10% off your purchase. If you are looking to buy a budget electric skateboard for less than $500, you are currently spoiled with selections. The top picks at this time would no doubt be the Wowgo 2S Max and the Meepo V4. But don't forget about Tynee Board. The Tynee Board Classic is definitely competing for the third spot. So how good is the Tynee Board Classic? Well, spoiler alert, we think it is the boring and safe choice for anyone looking for a comfortable budget electric skateboard. The Tynee Board Classic is the embodiment of the current standard for entry-level electric skateboards, and you will see why by the end of the video. First, we'll go through the specs real quick and see how different it is from the typical budget electric skateboard. Let's start with the electronics. For electronic speed control, Tynee Board Classic uses a 10S Hobbywing ESC with a smart turn-on. For those who don't know, Hobbywing ESC is now the most common and safest choice for speed control, as it has always provided smooth and intuitive speed control. The battery has two options, the $449 and $509 versions. The $449 5 amp hour model of Tynee Board Classic uses a Samsung 25R. It's a common and good choice. The battery configuration is 10S2P, meaning it packs 180 watt-hours. Pull up the bubble chart, and you can see that 180 watt-hours is the median battery size you can expect from a sub-$500 board. Notably, with the $509 version, you get a bigger 10S3P configured DME-GC29E cell for a big 313 watt-hour pack of battery. While DME-GC cells are not well known, a 313 watt-hour battery pack for $500 is quite a steal. The review unit we got is the 5 amp hour Tynee Board Classic, and it has a marketed range of 12 miles or 19 kilometers. We gave it a try, and our 210 pounds or 95 kilogram test rider managed to get 7.5 miles or 12 kilometers out of it. Both the marketed range and the tested range are typical for electric skateboards under $500. The 8.7 amp hour version has a marketed range of 22 miles or 35 kilometers. Next, let's talk about the motors. The Tynee Board Classic uses a set of 350 watt motors from Hobbywing, and this is the average motor size for this price range. The wheel size is 90 millimeters for the street and is compatible with cloud wheel donuts. The top speed is 23 miles per hour or 38 kilometers per hour. Again, this is typical. At this point, you might notice that the Tynee Board Classic had simply gone with what's known to work. Besides offering an 8.7 amp hour version, which is a great value for the price, both the motor and ESC are just typical choices that are common for the price. Considering that the electronic parts are the go-to choices of Tynee Board's competitors, perhaps the skate parts could set the Tynee Board Classic apart, which they did, at least for a little bit. The Tynee Classic uses a real Canadian maple deck, with medium flex and mild concave. This is great news for those who enjoy a flexible deck for a smoother ride and a better carving feel. To add context, the major competitors chose stiffer decks for their boards. As for the trucks, the Tynee Board Classic has their proprietary trucks named Tynee PE. If you remember from our previous Tynee Board reviews, these trucks are fairly decent and geared towards stability rather than responsiveness. The boards are 15.4 pounds or 7 kilograms and are rated to be IP54 waterproof. Again, a waterproof rating doesn't mean much in the electric skateboarding world. Perhaps the Tynee Board Classic is a tad bit more waterproof than its competitors, but we would never recommend riding the board when it's wet outside. So those are the specs for the Tynee Board Classic. I bet seasoned e-skaters can already imagine what kind of ride profile the board has just by going through the list on paper. But we'll go ahead and show you the ride experience anyway. With no surprise, the Tynee Board Classic has super smooth acceleration and brakes, both nice and strong thanks to the Hobbywing ESC. The 350 watt hub motors are quiet and competent. Although they are not the most powerful or thrilling, it handles the incline well. The board is quite nice for carving. The Tynee PE trucks, while inferior to branded premium trucks in responsiveness, are still nice and responsive, have a good return to center, and are stable even at full speed. I think most casual or beginner riders would appreciate Tynee going with a stable truck for an easy and relaxed ride. What Tynee Board Classic is bad at is what all dual hub boards are bad at: fighting road vibrations from rough pavements. Even though the Tynee Classic is better at it, thanks to the flexible deck that absorbs part of the shock, it's still very uncomfortable and will make you give in to spending for cloud wheels. So, all in all, here are the Tynee Board Classic's good parts: competitive specs, adequate power, and smooth and stable rides. The Tynee Board Classic is not exactly the most exciting board in town. It is, however, an affordable, comfortable, and competent electric longboard that suits someone who just wants a relaxing ride. While the same praise could be sung louder for its competitor, the Wowgo 2S Max, aka our pick for best budget electric skateboard at the moment, the Tynee Board Classic offers a different ride taste for choosing a flexible deck instead of Wowgo's stiff deck. And, it has a bigger battery if you went for the 8.7 amp hour version. In general, the Tynee Board Classic is literally a classic choice if your style is to go with e-skate parts that have worked all these years. As always, if you are looking to buy a Tynee board, or actually any e-skate, be sure to use our affiliated discount code with the link below. It will help you get a small monetary discount and helps us out too. You'll also be tagged as an Electric Skateboard HQ customer and probably be treated better. Ride safe, guys.